Ecstasy is turning on America.
It's easier for them to buy ecstasy than it is for them to try and go buy a six-pack.
Ecstasy is making kids sick. Some are even dying. But smugglers continue to bring the drug into the country in increasing quantities. Investigators trace the ecstasy trail worldwide to its main source, Amsterdam.
The problem of ecstasy is bigger, much bigger worldwide than the problem of heroin and cocaine.
For December 4th, 2000, this is Investigative Reports.
It is fast becoming the drug of choice for a new generation. Ecstasy looks just like an over-the-counter pill, and it is surprisingly easy to get. It's making the party scene all over the country. Users say it creates good feelings, relaxation, and suppresses the need to eat or sleep. Perfect to dance all night. But ecstasy has a dark side. It's been found to cause brain damage and even death. Tonight on Investigative Reports, we go inside the club scene to find out just how accessible this dangerous designer drug has become. We'll hear from users and parents who have experienced firsthand the agony of ecstasy. Sound Beach, New York is a small town of just over 9,000 people, next to the ocean on Long Island. It's a quiet and pleasant place to live, but some teens find it boring.
There's nothing really to do in the town. It's too small. There's nobody there. I don't even hang out in my own town. That's how small it is.
Like so many towns in America, it's not so small that the kids can't find the drugs they want. And that includes ecstasy, the synthetic drug taking America by storm.
It's pretty easy to go to, if you know the right people in school, you can get the ecstasy pretty well.
Kristen's boyfriend, Jimmy Lyons, smoked a little marijuana, and according to Kristen, didn't do hard drugs. He managed to hold down 2 jobs while attending high school and lived here in this small house with his mother, Margaret. In the early morning hours of January 24th, 1999, Jimmy Lyons and some friends decided to head to New York City, just an hour away, to celebrate.
He had just turned 18 a couple of weeks prior, but these are friends he hadn't seen in a while, and they wanted to take him out for his 18th birthday.
Their destination was the Tunnel, one of New York's hottest 18 and over nightclubs, notorious for its cavernous nooks and crannies, and for what the cops describe as its drug supermarket atmosphere. Jimmy Lyons and his friends had no trouble purchasing a brand of ecstasy called Mitsubishi Turbo. What Jimmy didn't know is that ecstasy dehydrates the body, and he didn't drink any water. To make matters worse, he mixed the ecstasy with another drug called ketamine, known on the streets as Special K.
What the police explained to me was that with these drugs, you dehydrate. And that's why a lot of these clubs, they sell bottles of water at $5 a pop. It's because these kids know that when you do the drugs, you have to drink a lot of this water.
Clubgoers reported seeing Jimmy having seizures in a bathroom. But by the time an ambulance was called, it was too late. The police called his mother.
He said, I have some bad news for you. And when he said that, I thought, oh my God, Jimmy's really in trouble. You know, he's got bad news, you know. And that's when he told me my son passed away at 5 o'clock in the morning.
The autopsy stated that Jimmy Lyons had died of acute intoxication by the combined effects of ecstasy, known as methylene dioxymethamphetamine, and the drug ketamine.
They said that after Jimmy was dead, 4 hours, his temperature was still 104. Now your body's supposed to turn cold. And my son was still 104. So I guess what it did is it just fried his brain.
While Margaret says she recognizes Jimmy's responsibility for taking the drugs, she was horrified to learn about how readily available drugs were at the tunnel that night. 4 months after Jimmy died, Margaret hired a private investigator to look into her son's death.
Just a few weeks after this particular incident happened with Jimmy, DEA and the police department raided the tunnel, buying exactly the same kinds of drugs that Jimmy had purchased the evening of his demise. So there was a reason the people wanted to go in. It's not that they couldn't party. This was a different kind of party. This was the supermarket, the end-all, the be-all, the Disney World party. And the tunnel was the place to go and be seen and to have fun.
Drug dealing is so pervasive in the New York club scene, the police department often sends in undercover cops to investigate. 2 New York investigators were amazed at what they found.
The kids that were there were just so young, 17, 18-year-olds. The music was extremely loud, and in parts throughout the night, the music would stop, and it would be ecstasy, ecstasy.
The cops were able to purchase ecstasy in a matter of minutes.
I walked up to a young male. He was about maybe 20. I asked him if he had any E, because I had a feeling that he had ecstasy on him. And he said, yeah, how many do you want? I asked for 2, and he had a bag, a plastic baggie with probably 25 pills of ecstasy in it.
This was the scene of Jimmy's birthday celebration. The lure of the unknown and one night of experimentation with a new drug.
He was a kid who worked real hard all the time and was going to do this one thing, you know? And unfortunately took his life.
The culture that Jimmy joined that night in New York is happening all over America. A dance culture similar to the disco scene of the 1970s, but now the music is called techno. Whether it's at clubs or at all-night dance parties known as raves, the music and dancing go non-stop, often all night. The focus is to dance and have a good time, but just as cocaine found its way into the disco clubs, ecstasy has become part of this culture. This woman is a 21-year-old college graduate.
Ecstasy is definitely a great drug to dance to. It gives you a feeling that I've never experienced from anything else before. So, kind of like Jell-O, you're all tingly.
It's a synthetic drug, which is swallowed as a pill. And it looks just like an aspirin or a capsule. On the street, it's called E, X, or rolls. Ecstasy creates a euphoric mood, and it has gained a loyal following among mostly young, white, middle-class teenagers. The National Household Survey on Drug Abuse found that approximately 3.5 million Americans have used ecstasy, the majority of them between the ages of 18 and 25. According to another study by the University of Michigan, ecstasy use is up an astonishing 50% among older teenagers.
I probably started using ecstasy about 6 years ago when I was still in high school. For me, it's very easy to find ecstasy. I know people who do it every day. I do ecstasy probably like 3 times a month.
This man first used ecstasy 15 years ago when he was 27 and still uses it several times a month.
There's an amazing amount of euphoria that goes along with it. While you retain your clarity of mind, you feel very alert and very tranquil. I only take it when I go dancing. I love dancing. I love going out to clubs and raves. And usually when I take it, I dance for 8 hours.
With the astonishing rise in ecstasy use throughout the country, the police are forced to become experts on the drug. Eladio Paez wants his face hidden because he is an undercover investigator for the Miami Police Department. He shot this video during surveillance.
People under the effects of ecstasy react in different ways. Many engage in looking or watching some type of psychedelic video, engage in flashing lights in front of their faces because it's a hallucinogen. They engage in hugging, caressing themselves because all that enhances the effect of ecstasy.
Glow sticks, pacifiers, and lollipops are all visual clues at these events indicating that ecstasy is probably being used.
Ecstasy is a drug that will give you an effect that lasts 4 to 6 hours. Those who use ecstasy eventually must calm down. There comes a point in time where they want to rest. So they need a place to cool down, chill out, as they call it. Many of these clubs will advertise a place where they can go and chill out, have cool air conditioning, and come down from the drug.
Ecstasy fits the culture, and cops say many kids see nothing wrong with it.
There's a stigma that attaches to heroin, cocaine, that it's for junkies and, you know, people that live on the street, and the kids just don't understand the effects of ecstasy. They feel like it's their drug, like it's part of their culture, and it's part of them as a group of teenagers.
While the cops are fighting to get ecstasy off the streets and out of the clubs, doctors are rushing to research its medical effects. Just how dangerous is ecstasy? Next on Investigative Reports. Ecstasy is the fastest growing abused drug in the United States. As the police are learning more and more about it, researchers are scrambling to find out exactly how dangerous the drug is. At the Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore, Dr. Karen Bola and other researchers conducted a 4-year-long study of ecstasy users.
In heavy amounts, it produces alterations in brain functioning at a cellular level, which we see as changes in your ability to function in everyday life. The memory problems that some of these people had were, number one, large enough to measure, and number two, large enough that they complained that their memories weren't as good as they used to be.
Ecstasy, or methylene dioxymethamphetamine, is officially known as MDMA. It acts as both a stimulant and a hallucinogen. Up until 1985, it was legal. It's now just as illegal as LSD and heroin. Ecstasy floods the brain with serotonin, which controls mood, sleeping, and eating habits, and sexual function. This flooding serotonin creates the intense euphoric high described by users. Heavy ecstasy use has been shown to deplete serotonin levels in the brain, which has been associated with the loss of memory.
As far as what we don't know, which is probably the critical question, is are these effects reversible? We don't know. Some of the animal research has shown that there's still changes at the cellular level 7 years after the animals haven't been given MDMA. So you're talking about a drug that can potentially damage your brain for the rest of your life.
As with most drugs, the side effects of ecstasy can create sickness, even death. In Miami, this 18-year-old died from too much ecstasy. According to police, he had taken as many as 5 ecstasy pills over the course of the night.
To see someone on an overdose of ecstasy, you can compare it with taking a fish out of water and throw it on the ground. Can't control their movements. They are constantly chewing on their mouth, chewing on their tongue. They're sweating. Fever is extremely high. A doctor described it to me as going into a microwave and turning it on. You basically are cooking in the inside. So it's extremely dangerous. It's not just something that you take to lose inhibitions. it's extremely dangerous.
Researchers say that ecstasy overdoses are rare. Problems occur when it's mixed with other drugs, or when someone experiences heat stroke or heart failure, brought on by dehydration and non-stop dancing. Because it's a synthetic drug made in a laboratory and because it is unregulated, no one can ever be sure what's in the ecstasy they buy. This 25-year-old has used ecstasy recreationally for the past 2 years.
I am very worried about what might be caught in it. For that reason, I don't really grab it and buy it at clubs, or I don't really just get it from anyone. It's always kind of gotten through a friend and found out, you know, what's in that, how was it, did you do any of it? And I've done it before and gotten a blast of heroin, laid on my back all night staring at the ceiling.
Despite the risks, doctors' studies are finding that ecstasy use is not limited to young people.
It's across the board. There's a lot of adults, a lot of very well-educated people that use MDMA. A lot of physicians, a lot of PhDs.
Some people even advocate its legalization. Rick Dublin believes that ecstasy can be useful for therapeutic reasons.
It's a tool. It's a tool that has a whole variety of uses. Right now in our culture, it's mostly considered to be used as a recreational drug by young people in a dance context. But the tool is enormously versatile, and it can be used for psychotherapy, it can be used for spiritual inspiration.
Although ecstasy began to emerge on the drug scene back in the early 1980s, it's only recently that law enforcement authorities have seen a dramatic surge in its use. Big cities like New York were the first.
We've seized about 563,000 doses of ecstasy over the last year, and that's about 10 times what we've seen in the previous year.
Lewis Rice is the special agent in charge of the DEA's New York field office.
This is a suitcase that we seized in an actual ecstasy investigation. Inside of the suitcase, it's basically hollowed out and covered over. Over 300,000 tablets can be contained in this suitcase.
DEA is seeing the same alarming trend nationwide.
And we've seen a dramatic increase. When you chart the decade of the 90s, from the beginning of 1990 up until 1998, our seizures were minimal. In 1998, we started to see a little bit more. In 1999, we had a dramatic spike. We're seeing a lot more ecstasy investigations.
According to DEA, some ecstasy is made in the United States in clandestine labs. Located in remote areas like southwest Texas, these labs are growing bigger and bigger as the demand for ecstasy grows. Lieutenant Patrick O'Burke works for the Texas Department of Public Safety. He concentrates on breaking up illegal ecstasy labs.
This is actually an ecstasy lab where we located approximately 350,000 gel capsules and probably about 100 pounds of chemicals that could be used to manufacture ecstasy. The entire building had been set up to be an ecstasy lab.
Lieutenant Patrick O'Burke estimates that it was capable of producing about 1.5 million ecstasy capsules. At $25 a pill, that's a street value of $37 million. The criminals who set up this lab purchased large quantities of legal compounds, which they then used to manufacture the illegal precursor drugs needed to make ecstasy. The manufacture of ecstasy takes some sophistication and patience and requires a basic knowledge of chemistry. Pill stamping machines like these require a license in the United States, so capsules are used instead, each individually filled with ecstasy.
Because of what they're doing by taking other chemicals and manufacturing precursors and then manufacturing drugs, and the fact that you're dealing with organic compounds, it's a fairly difficult process. It's not something that you're going to put together in your kitchen like making a cake.
What frightens Lieutenant Patrick O'Burke is how easily accessible the information needed to make ecstasy is, something he discovered while surfing the internet.
he's got a number of different reactions in here that will enable him to arrive at actually making MDMA. They're putting information out there in people's hands about how to manufacture drugs. And that's specifically what they talk about on some of these sites. How to manufacture drugs, how to keep from getting caught by law enforcement. You know, what you can do to set up your own clandestine laboratory. That's what some of these sites are about. And yeah, they are scary. They scare me to death. Because it might be my son at high school or your kid at college that winds up finding one of these recipes and says, hey, I want to manufacture my own dope. And that's what's going on.
Despite the increase in the manufacture of ecstasy within the United States, most of the drug is smuggled into the country, pushing law enforcement to new and unfamiliar areas. That's next. As the popularity of ecstasy grows, law enforcement is faced with not only controlling the manufacturing and distribution of it here in the United States, but they are dealing with the even larger problem, the importing of ecstasy from other countries, which is growing dramatically. By far the biggest increase in ecstasy trafficking has been seen by United States Customs. And it's such a problem that a special task force has been set up to deal just with this drug. Ecstasy seizures by Customs have jumped sharply from 350,000 tablets in all of 1997 to more than 8 million tablets in the year 2000. Investigative Reports was allowed an inside look into the Customs ecstasy investigation to document its spread and distribution. The man who heads up the investigation is the Commissioner of U.S. Customs, Ray Kelly.
We've had seizures in Cleveland. We've had seizures in Birmingham, Alabama. We've had seizures in Iowa. So we see now the spreading of ecstasy from the initial hubs of New York, Miami, and Los Angeles to the middle parts of our country.
Customs is finding that drug dealers are moving into the ecstasy market in a big way, for good reason.
It could be the most profitable drug on the market right now. It costs anywhere from 2 to 5 cents to make a pill. The wholesale sells for anywhere from $2 to $8, and then what they're selling it for in the United States is anywhere from $25 to $40. So that type of markup is incredible.
Organized crime groups smuggling ecstasy into the country in large quantities have grown stronger, creating efficient distribution networks and feeding the increasing demand in the hottest clubs.
You know, in a strange way, I think it really is supply driving demand. Ecstasy's been around for a long time. In the late 90s, we saw the whole distribution system being better organized. And in a peculiar sort of way, that seemed to drive a significant increase in demand in the United States.
This is the kind of thing Kelly is talking about. Within a 3-month period, ecstasy seizures included almost 300,000 pills with a street value of $4 million in Boston. In San Francisco, nearly 500,000 pills had been smuggled on board a flight from France. And in Los Angeles, 25 people were arrested in the breakup of an ecstasy distribution network, which may have imported as many as 9 million pills. The main gateway for ecstasy coming into the United States is here at JFK Airport in New York.
Step this way, sir.
Over the past 20 years, Vincent DiGilio has seen all kinds of smuggling techniques in his work as a customs inspector.
Methods of concealments involve people putting even 1 or 2 tablets in an envelope, and maybe a photo album or a book that, you know, has been hollowed out to contain 5,000, 6,000 pills. There was a shipment recently in the Midwest where someone had sent a cargo shipment of little ladybug magnets. Now, they look very pretty inside this box. There was hundreds of them, but inside the shell of each ladybug magnet was 1 ecstasy pill.
And they will use every method imaginable to distract suspicious inspectors by putting decoy couriers on the same flight, traveling with young children, or even in one case, traveling with a mentally challenged person. Often, people are simply pulled out of line at random and questioned.
In asking questions, some people will exhibit unexplained nervousness to everyday questions. It could be something as simple as a carotid artery pulsating on their neck.
Sometimes questioning leads to a body search. But not everyone can be questioned, and not every suitcase can be examined. So new measures need to be taken. Research chemists for the Customs Service analyze everything about ecstasy, from its formula to its smell.
What I'm measuring here is the odor that is associated with different ecstasy seizures. And cocaine smells very different. It has a very different mixture of odor from ecstasy. It's very different from methamphetamine. It's very different from heroin.
They have used this knowledge to train more than a dozen dogs to sniff out ecstasy. Customs also analyzes the logos which appear on many ecstasy pills. These logos are used to market the drug, and investigators hope that it will provide some clue to its manufacture and distribution. But the big question for Customs is, where is all the ecstasy coming from? What their investigation is showing is that the vast majority of ecstasy is coming into the United States from Europe. And that's very different from their past experience.
U.S. law enforcement was looking primarily southward as far as narcotics coming into the United States. Clearly, Colombia, Peru, Bolivia. Now, with ecstasy, the locus has shifted to Europe. That's where it's being manufactured. That's where it's coming from.
Next, the customs investigation leads to Amsterdam, Holland, where soft drugs like marijuana and hashish are legal, and ecstasy is being manufactured in bulk quantities. Holland has a worldwide reputation for being soft on drugs. Throughout Amsterdam and places like its famous red light district, you can buy small amounts of marijuana and hashish legally. To add to its reputation, a Dutch law enforcement officer has said Holland is now to synthetic drugs what Colombia is to cocaine. There is no way to measure how many people use ecstasy worldwide, but the Dutch know that the problem is huge. Hans Peters is a special prosecutor in charge of investigations into synthetic drugs.
When you look at the amount of users, the number of users, the problem of ecstasy is bigger, much bigger worldwide than the problem of heroin and cocaine.
Authorities here are quick to point out that they have a much tougher policy against ecstasy than they do against soft drugs like marijuana. Peter Renders is in charge of a special police unit set up to investigate ecstasy and other synthetic drugs.
Synthetic drugs are not a love drug or a club drug, as it is called in the United States, but it is a very dangerous hard drug.
In the past, Dutch authorities have experienced problems with the illegal manufacture of synthetic drugs like amphetamines. Because the amphetamine production process is similar to ecstasy, the labs are easily converted. As demand for ecstasy increased, ecstasy labs began to spring up in the early 1990s. The police broke up 36 ecstasy production sites in the last year alone. At United States Customs, Ray Kelly and his team have been working closely with Dutch law enforcement authorities in an attempt to stop the flow of ecstasy trafficking.
The Dutch will tell you that for every lab that they close, it seems 10 more seem to open up. So it's a difficult problem for them.
This special unit set up by Dutch authorities to investigate synthetic drugs is just one of a few such units in the world. Detectives here asked to remain anonymous.
A couple of years ago, we saw that a lot of production took place in the Netherlands. What we see now more and more is that it is not an exclusive activity in the Netherlands anymore. We see production sites in Belgium, in Germany, in Eastern Europe, in the United Kingdom, even in the United States of America.
But the Netherlands remains the main production site for ecstasy. It's always been a country whose economy depends on trade, and a lot of cargo arrives in ports like Amsterdam and Rotterdam from around the world, under the cloak of legitimate shipping, once disguised as peanut oil. The precursor drugs used to make up ecstasy are smuggled into the country from Asia and Eastern Europe. Precursor drugs like safrole, hypernol, and methylamine are brought to a warehouse like this one. This illegal supermarket, busted by Dutch authorities, offered everything anyone would need to make ecstasy, including the formula, the equipment, and the precursor drugs, seen here in large brown shipping drums. Investigators find that these production sites are quite haphazard when it comes to manufacturing the drugs.
They have learned that from somebody else, who learned that again from somebody else. And that means, for example, when a problem occurs and when they are not able to solve that problem, things can happen. The production can set on fire, or there can be an explosion.
But Dutch investigators point out that the marketing and distribution of ecstasy is very sophisticated.
What we see more and more is that those production sites do not contain the complete production process. That means that the production process is being divided into several parts to spread the risks, to make law enforcement activities more difficult. I give you an example. The raw material is being produced in one production site, and the tablets are being produced in another production site. And it is even possible that those production sites are located in different countries.
Dutch police have discovered more than 400 different logos used to market ecstasy. The unauthorized logos are put on the face of the pills using stamps like Nike, Yin Yang, Playboy, and of course the heart shape in an effort to market ecstasy as the love drug. These stamps are put into a machine like this one, which can stamp out 500,000 pills an hour. The average ecstasy lab in Holland churns out 10 to 20 kilograms of ecstasy every week. They are then distributed worldwide.
You see a large use of ecstasy in the southern part of Europe, especially in the summer holidays. In Spain, Portugal, Italy. We see large transport lines to Germany. It's a very popular drug in Germany and in the United Kingdom, also in France.
An additional problem for the Dutch is that the manufacture of ecstasy produces excessive chemical waste. The police have over 100 documented cases of dumping thousands of gallons of toxic waste, buried anywhere the criminals can think of, on rural farmland, even next to a schoolyard in Amsterdam.
Now we see that they also dump the chemical waste into the public water system. Not only in the public water system, but also in rivers, in ditches, on the street.
Once the police discover their methods, the criminals find new ways of disposing of the chemicals. They now steal vans, load them up with toxic chemicals left over from the production of ecstasy, and set them on fire in an effort to destroy all evidence of criminal activity. Dutch police are trying to determine Who's behind the mass production of ecstasy? Many times it's just a small organization trying to make a lot of money quickly. But investigators believe that the marketing and distribution is too sophisticated for the common criminal.
I'm absolutely convinced that it is organized crime, but it is very difficult to get behind who is exactly responsible. Are there people who finance the production of synthetic drugs? Are there people who are responsible for the production, and how, especially, who is responsible for exporting or importing those tablets to the United States?
Next, a joint investigation by U.S. Customs and Dutch authorities is tying the distribution of ecstasy to organized crime as far away as Israel. What can be done to educate parents and teens on the dangers of ecstasy? You tell us at ANE.com. When large quantities of ecstasy are seized by U.S. Customs, investigators get some of their best clues where it's coming from. A close look at one ecstasy bust in 1999 is a good example of what law enforcement is up against worldwide. The Dutch police were involved with U.S. Customs and DEA, the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, and authorities from France and Belgium as well. It begins here in Amsterdam, where a criminal by the name of Sean Erez was allegedly involved in the production and distribution of ecstasy. Almost 1 million tablets. Authorities say Erez recruited men from the Williamsburg section of Brooklyn, New York, to act as drug couriers.
This organization recruited and cultivated young Hasidic males, paid them approximately $1,500 per trip, and actually offered them a finder's fee of $200 if they could identify additional couriers.
Erez told the young men that they would be smuggling diamonds in order to take some of the stigma out of the operation. Each courier would typically smuggle between 30 and 45,000 ecstasy pills.
More than likely, the reason for selecting young Hasidic Jews to carry ecstasy from the Netherlands and Belgium is, first of all, it's not unusual to see someone of that nature coming on a flight from Europe. Traditionally, we haven't found violations of law on these particular people, so just based upon their appearance, there's probably a good chance of them going through without an inspection.
One delivery of 30,000 pills had been manufactured in Amsterdam, driven to Brussels, stuffed inside 30 pairs of socks, and hand-carried by suitcase into JFK Airport, where the courier was arrested. The Dutch police had tipped U.S. authorities. As the police were making more arrests, Erez got worried and upset. At one point, according to police wiretaps, he even complained about the tunnel being closed by the New York police, the very club where Jimmy Lyons had died. But Sean Erez continued to organize more deals, from Israel to Montreal to Miami. The Miami police point to the trendy South Beach area as a place where ecstasy is commonly used. And one of Erez's main distributors, who was working in Miami, bragged that he could unload 80,000 ecstasy pills in less than 48 hours. But Dutch police from the specialized synthetic drugs unit had been on to Erez and had tapped his cell phone.
He was identified through a cooperative effort with Dutch law enforcement and U.S. law enforcement. There was a series of wiretaps that were conducted by the Dutch police in the Netherlands. They provided information to us, to the DEA and the Customs Service, and he was, in fact, arrested for distribution in the Netherlands. Janice, you have anything you want to?
At the U.S. Customs Ecstasy Task Force, investigators are particularly interested in an Israeli connection, which may be behind much of the distribution of the drug. When it comes to ecstasy, U.S. Customs is in daily contact with Interpol, the International Police Agency.
What's happened is the traffic has been brought to a certain state of maturity as a result of the organization that Israeli organized crime has brought to bear. That's not to say that they're the only ones involved in the trade.
Kelly points out that Israeli criminals already had an existing criminal structure set up in Holland for the smuggling of diamonds.
I think it was kind of a target of opportunity for them. They had a presence in the Netherlands. The Netherlands has been the locus of the production of ecstasy for quite a while. And they were there doing some other things. When you say who are they, I think they have an involvement with Russian organized crime. It is not a totally monolithic structure, but it is in fact a structure that has provided organization to the distribution for ecstasy.
Hans Peters, the Dutch prosecutor, says that it's too early to draw a conclusion that Israeli organized crime is the main supplier to the ecstasy dealers.
Sometimes you see they're working with Israeli groups, sometimes they work with Spanish groups, sometimes they work with Dutch groups or German groups or United Kingdom groups or American groups. And I think it's just one organization in the many we see in the international field.
We're concerned about the more traditional drug mobs getting involved in distribution. We just had a seizure last month, a significant seizure in Mexico of ecstasy that came from Amsterdam. There have been seizures recently in Thailand. And of course, the drug gangs of old have the distribution and network. Their network exists. So we're concerned about them using that network to bring ecstasy into the United States.
As authorities here in the United States are struggling to deal with the alarming spread of ecstasy, they might look to the Dutch, who have been dealing with the problem longer. Effective investigations in Holland were coupled with a 2-year public education program in the schools. The result, according to investigators, was that ecstasy use actually dropped.
Zou het nou echt helpen om al die leerlingen niet tussen de wielen te laten raken?
You can't do only the law enforcement. That doesn't work. You always lose the war on drugs. You try to reach the user. You try to show the dangers. You make a lot of publicity on it. And you do also law enforcement.
Precies allemaal met je lichaam doet, dat is ook nog steeds heel erg moeilijk. Er is gewoon nog echt weinig over bekend.
Authorities say that American public education about ecstasy is lacking, about the law and about the drug's effects.
The public doesn't know. If you're using cocaine, you're using heroin, or marijuana, you know you're doing something wrong, you know you're breaking the law. Ecstasy has this feel-good reputation. And still, there are many people, you go to websites and will tell you that there are no downsides, or don't listen to the government. What do they know? Well, that's changing, but it's changing slowly.
I don't think the word is out on ecstasy yet. That's where this drug abuse research needs to go. I think we need to understand as much as we possibly can. I think we need to educate, especially in the schools. There's this huge group that thinks this is just, this really safe drug, and it's really not.
As ecstasy sweeps the country, the doctors try to figure out its long-term effects. And the cops attempt to stem the tide. And Margaret Lyons is left without a son, trying to right a wrong by bringing a lawsuit against the club in New York, where Jimmy Lyons died.
Try to make people aware. I don't want any other parent to get the phone call that I got. I don't want kids to lose a friend. I don't want a life to be cut short like Jimmy's. He had so much living to do. He was only 18 years old. Every time you let your kid go out to that club, you're really taking the child's life in your hands. And people have to start realizing that. Because when these kids are going out to clubs, they're not going to dance. They're not going to have a few drinks. That's not what they're there for. They go for the drugs.
Experts warn parents who are concerned about the dangers of ecstasy to discourage their children from going to raves or all-night dance parties. Despite the efforts of law enforcement, the use of ecstasy continues to grow and spread, with sharp increases in use among young adults. Many county governments are working to ensure that mass gatherings of people who may be using ecstasy are tightly regulated, and severe penalties are enforced for those who traffic the drug. I'm Bill Curtis. Thanks for watching Investigative Reports here on A&E. Tomorrow night,